At the ruins of the Shishan base, the place was covered in dust, making it uninhabitable. The supplies inside had been looted by Zhang Yi. However, one day the heavy iron door suddenly shook violently. It seemed as though some powerful mysterious force was shaking it. After just a few strong and fierce impacts, the door was broken. In the dark space, a green light flickered, emitting a stench that made one want to vomit. From the door slowly stepped out a group of corpses with tattered bodies and hollow eyes. Zombies appeared in massive numbers, quickly occupying the entire passageway. They seemed to be driven by some kind of force, slowly moving towards the door of the Shishan base. Outside, the blizzard was raging. Zombies from the Shishan base were pouring out in their thousands, heading towards Zhang Yi's manor. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi sat in his hideout on a sofa, sipping coffee and chatting with Yang Xinchen. Yang Xinchen had a laptop on her lap, slowly providing Zhang Yi with information about the recent activities of the 4 other factions. Over the past month, she had hacked into their networks and secretly monitored their every move from the shadows. Unlike the Shishan base, their cybersecurity systems were much weaker, even just at the standard of a domestic company. The Qingpu base and Baishu's sect didn't even have dedicated cybersecurity personnel. They relied on phones and satellites to transmit information. For Yang Xinchen, a professional hacker, infiltrating their networks was extremely easy. Xinchen reported that based on the current situation, the Qingpu base still chose stability and to protect what they had. They had no intention of expanding and were quite satisfied with their current territory. After the Zhaoyu base's defeat in battle, their leader Wei Dinghai was seriously injured and became more cautious. He always stayed within his defensive lines, which even allowed other armed factions to appear in their territory. Yang Shang's base maintained its dominant position and ruthlessly suppressed several rebellions within their territory. As for the Baishu sect, they could be considered the biggest winners. After the Great Battle, their membership was rapidly increasing, and could soon reach over 100,000 people. Zhang Yi sat on the sofa listening to Yang Xinchen's report. Nothing was too surprising except for the information about the Baishu sect, which made him extremely curious. They were recruiting followers like mad. What would they rely on to sustain them? A human typically varied from young to old, male to female. Not everyone could become a useful warrior or laborer. Many people wouldn't necessarily be useful and could even become a burden. Even other bases and organizations, even with relatively abundant supplies, had to maintain a certain population size. Zhang Yi furrowed his brows, pondering the significance of this action. Could Yuan Kongya really see himself as the savior of the world? Yang Xinchen looked at Zhang Yi and said nonchalantly, "Actually, there is another possibility." Zhang Yi looked up, intrigued. "Oh, please explain further." Yang Xinchen calmly explained, "Now is an apocalyptic era, even tougher than chaotic times. Typically during such periods the world order undergoes significant changes. Zhang Yi, you might not have grand ambitions and just wish to live a peaceful life, but that doesn't mean others with power think the same way." Yang Xinchen continued, "Perhaps Baishu's sect also intends to quickly become the leading force in the city. When their number of followers is large enough and their doctrine spreads widely, then even the 3 major bases or us could be assimilated." Yang Xinchen concluded, "In theory, someone in Baishu's sect wants to rebuild faith and become a deity in this disordered apocalyptic world." Zhang Yi smiled lightly, not believing it. The idea sounded ridiculous, but Yang Xinchen was very serious. "Trust me, this is no joke. In extreme situations people will grasp at any chance of survival, even though the city's residents are quite educated. When faced with life and death, they will be ready to kneel." Zhang Yi crossed his arms and looked into the distance. He glanced out the window and shook his head. "I acknowledge your reasoning, but the times have changed. A large number of people alone is not enough to dominate everything. Even if the Baishu sect truly has over 100,000 members, they still can't gain an absolute advantage over other factions that possess modern weapons." Yang Xinchen turned to Zhang Yi and asked, "What if they use Yuan Kongya's blessing ability to awaken more mutants?" This question made Zhang Yi frown and thought. It was indeed a matter worth considering. However, he quickly gave his response. "Mutants are just slightly stronger humans. There's no need to deify them excessively like gods. Moreover, I know a lot about mutants and only a few are truly powerful enough to be terrifying." But Yang Xinchen looked at him with admiration. "You say that because you have become very strong now?" Zhang Yi, who possessed the space ability, had absorbed many powerful mutants, including some of the top fighters from the Shishan base. The extent of Zhang Yi's current strength was something no one dared to assert, but he himself knew best. In recent battles with the bases he had never had to exert his full strength. Zhang Yi patted his thigh gently and with a profound look gazed out the window. The Baishu sect. We need to be careful with this sect. As he was speaking, Zhang Yi's eyes suddenly became sharp. He sensed someone approaching through the blizzard. From the distant horizon vague silhouettes appeared, slowly advancing towards them. Zhang Yi looked at the scene before him, stunned for a moment. He felt like he was seeing things. In such freezing conditions, how could so many people appear at once? Even in previous military battles the number of soldiers gathered here was not this large. But as he looked more closely he realized it was not an illusion. A very large group of people was indeed moving towards them. Zhang Yi suddenly jumped up from the sofa and shouted, "Alert everyone in the hideout to quickly gather in the living room and get equipped." While speaking, Zhang Yi hurriedly retrieved a gun from his dimensional space. Zhang Yi changed his clothes and headed towards the living room. Yang Xinchen asked in surprise what's going on. Zhang Yi, holding the gun, stared intently out the window and said, "Look carefully outside. Is there something appearing?" Yang Xinchen wheeled herself closer to the window. She squinted and observed carefully. Finally she recognized that along the horizon many people were indeed approaching. Yang Xinchen's face turned pale instantly. Why are there so many people? Where are they coming from? Could it be that other forces are joining together to attack us? Everyone also hurried to the living room. Uncle Vu approached and asked Zhang Yi what's going on. Zhang Yi took the binoculars and looked through the lens to the opposite side. He felt a chill down his spine. Those shadows turned out not to be people but a group of zombies slowly approaching. Their clothes were torn and old, their bodies covered with the bluish-purple hue of corpses. Some faces had even started to decay. However, due to the extremely cold temperature, their bodies hadn't completely decomposed. Zhang Yi whispered, "Zombies, they have really appeared." Everyone was terrified and quickly used binoculars to observe. Through the lens those corpses were slowly moving toward them. It was certainly not a trick. Liang Yu suddenly said, "Could it be that these corpses crawled out from the Shishan base?" Zhang Yi was surprised. "How do you know?" After carefully observing through the binoculars, Liang Yu pointed at the zombies. "Look closely, some of these corpses are still wearing the uniforms of the Shishan base." Following Liang Yu's direction, Zhang Yi observed. Indeed, upon closer inspection some corpses were wearing the uniforms of the Shishan base. Zhang Yi put down the binoculars. After his initial shock he gradually calmed down. "It's really strange, isn't it? Despite the freezing weather these corpses haven't frozen and can still move." Yang Xinxin analyzed, "It might be some kind of virus that's been released." Zhang Yi nodded. "Fortunately it's only a few corpses, though. A bit scary. Understanding that it's caused by a virus isn't too surprising." Zhang Yi took a gun from his space. "Let's go, we need to put an end to these dead things." Remember, when fighting zombies, aim for the head to be more effective. Everyone regained their composure, realizing that these were just zombies. There was no need to be afraid as they had agile combat abilities and were well armed. For Zhang Yi and his group, killing zombies was simple and not dangerous, just a zombie killing game. Even Lu Karen couldn't help but run up to Zhang Yi and say sarcastically, "Big brother, give me a gun too, I want to try." Zhang Yi thought for a moment, then handed her a rifle. "Stay right next to me and be careful when shooting, don't hit our teammates." Lu Karen enthusiastically replied, "Got it. Finally my chance." She took the rifle, her face full of excitement. It was best for Zhang Yi to leave Huahua at home, mainly out of concern that it might eat something harmful to its stomach. Zhokir and others were still afraid of zombies, so they sit at home. When Zhang Yi and his group left the house their faces showed relief. Recently everyone had been training hard but hadn't had a chance to test their skills. This occasion was perfect for them to try out their abilities against live targets. Uncle Vu transformed into a giant and prepared to advance. Zhang Yi shouted, "Uncle Vu, use the gun." Uncle Vu laughed loudly, "No need, let's save some ammunition." Liang Yu, also eager for battle, drew his sword and charged forward. The three behind were Zhang Yi, Lu Karen and Su Chunlei. They chose to use guns to eliminate the enemies from the rear. Zhang Yi shot accurately while Su Chunlei and Lu Karen focused on practicing their gun usage. Lu Karen excitedly said, "Su Chunlei, let's see who can kill more zombies." Su Chunlei sneered, "Then I'll definitely win. I've been practicing a few months longer than you." Zhang Yi didn't use his superpowers, relying only on his precise shooting ability. Su Chunlei and Lu Karen also aimed at the zombies' heads and fired. Instantly 2 zombies were hit in the head and fell, but suddenly Zhang Yi noticed something. Something was wrong. The zombie that had been shot in the head seemed to be slowly getting up. Could it be that because they were frozen they didn't die? No way, even as the undead they were still flesh and blood and couldn't possibly endure being shot. As Zhang Yi was pondering, the zombie stood up again with a bullet hole in its head, but no blood flowing out, and it continued to advance. At this moment Uncle Vu and Liang Yu quickly rushed forward, simultaneously swinging their swords at the zombie. In that instant the previously silent zombies unexpectedly erupted into a terrifying fury. They let out a chilling howl from their throats resembling wild dogs. Immediately afterward thousands of zombies on the snowy field issued the same howl and charged toward Liang Yu and Uncle Vu. The zombies' initial sluggishness vanished and their speed now rivaled that of hunting dogs. They charged straight towards Uncle Vu and Liang Yu. In an instant countless zombies surrounded Uncle Vu and Liang Yu. Before Zhang Yi could even react he saw the two of them being swarmed by thousands of zombies. Zhang Yi shouted, "Be careful." Uncle Vu's voice rang out. Damn it, he swung the shovel in his hand, sweeping away a dozen zombies and even cutting through the bodies of 3 others. These zombies were incredibly tough, their bodies were not weak at all. Fortunately Uncle Vu and Liang Yu were also mutants with enhanced abilities. Their close combat skills were extremely strong, and even though they were surrounded by thousands of zombies they could still fight back effectively. Liang Yu wielded his sword. The cold blade flashed through the air, easily slicing through the steel-like bodies of the zombies. However, this method of killing was too inefficient given the vast number of zombies. If this continued they would be exhausted and likely eaten by the zombies. No one had anticipated the situation would become so severe. Until a few seconds ago Zhang Yi and the others had thought of zombies as slow-moving fragile creatures completely different from what they were now facing. These zombies were stronger, fiercer, faster and harder to kill. Even after being chopped in half, a zombie would only collapse for a few seconds before raising its head and screaming again. Su Chunlei, seeing the broken bodies on the ground still struggling and crawling towards Uncle Vu and Liang Yu, couldn't help but feel terrified. Su Chunlei exclaimed in shock, "Even with their heads smashed they still won't die. How can we eliminate them? What kind of monsters are they? Why can't they be killed?" Lu Karen, pale with fear, hurriedly fired her gun in hopes of killing a few more zombies and saving Uncle Vu and Liang Yu. However, this action not only failed to kill the zombies but also attracted their attention. A huge group of zombies broke away and headed towards the 3 of them. Zhang Yi remained calm, knowing that shooting them in the head wouldn't kill these zombies and that guns were ineffective. He put away his handgun and drew a circle in the air. A massive spatial door appeared in front of them. The zombies rushed forward at incredible speed, but before they could reach to Zhang Yi they disappeared one by one into the spatial door. Su Chunlei breathed a sigh of relief. Lucky, thanks to the boss's spatial door. With this we can easily deal with these mindless zombies clearly. However, right after Su Chunlei spoke, the zombies that had been charging forward suddenly stopped in front of the spatial door. Zhang Yi frowned, sensing that things were not so simple. Zombies, being mutated corpses, shouldn't possess intelligence, but their ability to sense danger and stop was entirely illogical. There were 2 possibilities: either these were not actual zombies but some other intelligent creatures, or someone was secretly controlling them. The second possibility seemed more plausible. Could someone be controlling the zombies just like the last time when the bodies of the soldiers disappeared without a trace? If so, then this could explain everything. Zhang Yi decided to use a simpler method to handle the situation. With his right hand he opened the spatial door and a massive heavy tank suddenly appeared on the snow. "Uncle Vu and Liang Yu, follow my orders. When I count to 3, both of you jump into the air." As soon as Zhang Yi finished speaking, he stepped inside the tank. Zhang Yi thought to himself, though controlling the tank wasn't entirely smooth for him, he had learned how to use it from Uncle Vu. Uncle Vu and Liang Yu immediately understood Zhang Yi's intention. After Zhang Yi loaded the cannon he began to count down: 3, 2, 1. As soon as the count reached 1, Uncle Vu and Liang Yu used all their strength to leap into the sky. Both being mutants with enhanced abilities, their extraordinary physical power allowed them to jump over 10 meters high. Meanwhile, the tank's cannon let out a deafening blast. A shell exploded amidst the zombies, sending hundreds of them flying. The zombies were blown apart, and Liang Yu and Uncle Vu quickly took this opportunity to breathe a sigh of relief and retreat to a safe place. The remaining zombies continued their relentless pursuit with terrifying speed. After reloading, the tank fired another shell. Once again it blasted hundreds of zombies away. However, there were still many zombies charging from different directions. Zhang Yi stepped out of the tank. He silently retrieved a peculiar piece of equipment from his space ability, consisting of 2 large metal canisters connected to a long nozzle. It looked like a pesticide sprayer. This device was a flamethrower which Zhang Yi had collected from the Shishan base and had never used before because of its short range and combustion nature. However, to deal with these hard-to-kill zombies it was very effective. Zhang Yi shouted, "Hurry up, they're still coming." He knelt on one knee to stabilize the flamethrower and started spewing a long stream of fire over 10 meters. Even in the freezing weather, the heat from the flamethrower was enough to make the zombies feel the burn. The zombies started to turn and flee. Zhang Yi's eyes sharpened. Running away are you? Their clothes caught fire and their bodies were ablaze. Concentrated in one spot, the effect of the flames became even more pronounced. Initially Zhang Yi was worried that the burning zombies would charge at them, but unexpectedly they couldn't control themselves and ran away. This further confirmed Zhang Yi's suspicion that these zombies were definitely being controlled by someone in the shadows.